to chapter 29, brought to you from the middle of the woods. Chapter 29, published January 21st, 2023. Years ago, my love gave me a book off his parents' bookshelf. It was about John Adams and included letters between him and his wife, Abigail. He said that their love reminded him of ours, how they could talk about anything, were the best of friends, and had a mutual, unmatched affection. After Betsy died, I knew that all she would want from me was to stay sober and to help other people. I remember looking up to the sky and promising her that I would. I also told myself that because of her, I would know what to do in any situation. But then all these things started to happen that I had never experienced before, and I found that I didn't know what to do. Something in me was still stirring, and I carried this unsettling feeling about the world. My world, my daughter, my job, my relationship. I needed help. I remembered a therapist I had as a teenager. A woman who I had forgotten for so long, but someone I knew once cared about me greatly. She knew me when I was close to my worst, and even in all my ugliness, still wanted to help me. I Googled her name and found that she was still practicing, and only 10 minutes from my house. I threw up my hands in a way that said, fuck it, and emailed her late that night. What do I have to lose? Surely there was no way she would remember me after all these years anyway. I received a response early the very next morning. She did remember me, and later told me that I was one of her earliest patients. I was also one of her most difficult ones. Trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, she said. Couldn't communicate to save my life. She was so happy to learn that I was sober. I started to see her on a weekly basis, for the most part, and we began to unravel it all. I quickly discovered, however, that I still had such a fucking hard time talking. Weren't we just discussing this? It was so frustrating, but she presented to me an unbiased mirror that I needed to look at. There was no judgment in the way she handled me. I simply needed to see some things, keep going, and not give up on myself. She showed me that I had, in fact, come a long way, and that mattered, but that I still had a ways to go, and still do, and that's okay too. I told her of everything of everything that my daughter had experienced in the past few years, and that I was scared that I had no idea what I was doing. She sympathized with me/her and suggested maybe we bring her in for a light chat, just to gauge her generally. I took my daughter with me a few times, and we kept it fun but focused. Played a game while talking about her experiences and residual feelings regarding them. To my surprise, she didn't appear to have any residual feelings. She genuinely didn't. She was able to talk about everything openly and was truly understanding and accepting. At least in that moment she was. And that moment was all we really had. Kids have taught me more in this life than most anybody. It was time to let all of that go to the best of my ability and just be present with my child. The next glaring issue, my job. The money was good and I was learning a lot, but I was exhausted. Exhausted of being away from my daughter so much, of having to prove myself endlessly as one of few women there, of not loving my life anymore. To the dismay of some, I just don't love money enough to deem any of that a worthy sacrifice. My therapist started planting alternative seeds in my mind, eventually leading to, what about starting your own business? Finally, it was time to honestly look at my relationship. I'm fascinated in a terrified way by the mind. How easy it is to deceive oneself. Once I started telling my therapist all of the facts of my relationship, it became harder and harder to lie to myself much longer. Though I am impressively stubborn and masochistically loyal, so why not drag it out to the bitter ends? I needed help to ask the hard questions. Denial is not helpful. And this is why we need each other. He was supportive of me going to therapy, as, of course, I really needed it. He even came with me a few times and contributed a potentially great idea. We would write each other letters. With all of my heart, I loved that thought. For a brief blip of time, I was full of hope for us again. Superficially, we were on the right road, though it is evident now how our motives were opposing one another. Maya, to demolish what wasn't working and find and fix the cracks. His, cosmetics. We wrote back and forth a few times, but then there was friction between us again in real life. So I did the only thing I knew with certainty that I could do and do well. I wrote him a letter. This particular letter was the most heartfelt, soul-saturated letter I had ever written in my life. I wish I still had it so that I could reminisce verbatim, but since I don't, I will share my favorite part of it loosely. My dear, when we were separated a few years ago, I had the most amazing dream. I was in a restaurant full of people. It was so loud that I couldn't even hear myself think. I don't know who the people were, and there were so many, I couldn't make out one singular feature to note about any of them. I sat on a bench at one end of a long rectangular table and saw you at the other side of the room. You saw me too and tried to make your way over, but there were too many people, too much in between us. You couldn't get to me. I saw you duck, and I ducked too so I wouldn't lose you. You crawled to me, and we held on to each other. We were surrounded by strangers, standing all around us. I closed my eyes and didn't want to let go because what if I couldn't find you again? When I opened my eyes, it was quiet, and instead of people, we were surrounded by trees. Just trees. It was our universe, and it was breathtaking. I awaited his response, while trying to keep my expectations in check as to what that would be. A few weeks later, I received a very short letter in return, with no acknowledgement of my letter at all. He never mentioned anything about it over the phone, either. All the letters I received from you seem to be written in so much haste that they scarcely leave room for a social feeling. They let me know that you exist, but some of them contain scarcely 6 lines. I want some sentimental effusions of the heart. I am sure you are not destitute of them. Abigail Adams to John, July 16th, 1775. Chapter 29. I just found a little heart rock. Yeah, chapter 29. Well, first of all, I was so thrilled to find that Abigail had written that to John, because it just validates that hundreds of years ago women were trying to say the same thing as I was in that moment. So I found that very funny. Otherwise, what was cool about this chapter is that it highlights how pain brings about willingness to ask for help. And I, I have found that that's always been the way I work, is like I need to be in extreme pain before I will ask for help. I need to be backed up against the wall with no other option before I will ask for help. But the more that's happened, either with age or probably experience and or age, I'm just not real interested in playing the pain game anymore. Like, I kind of see through it now in a way. So I'm less likely to just sit and suffer indefinitely. I'm more likely to want to find clarity and understand what's happening. So that I'm just thinking of my past self as a totally different person, but I would tell her that it was a good job. That was a good reach, because I really was feeling lost and I didn't have Betsy anymore and I hadn't been able to find another woman to connect with to replace her. So it was good that I went there. Um, and I believe I went for about 9 months and found that it served me and that I needed that person who could listen and straighten me out a little bit without having any personal feelings one way or the other. Um, and so it was definitely helpful, and I'm glad that I did it. And I would absolutely recommend to anyone who feels stuck or feels desperate or feels in pain to get some outside help. There's plenty of it. What I what I what rubs me the wrong way reading it back is, and even in that moment when she told me, the way that she remembered me was as a person who had trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, and the way that she said it was like boom boom. And I guess that just goes back to the labeling thing. Like, words have power, and experiences are merely experiences, and it's important to understand. I believe it has been important for me to define and understand my trauma and connect it to things that are still in me presently that will elicit different reactions or responses, and that are unconscious. I think it does help to bring the unconscious to the conscious just by understanding where we've been and what we've been through, and um, how I could have done that, how I could have grown without understanding that. I don't see the way. I would be open to hearing anyone else's opinion, but I believe I needed to understand that I had gone through specific traumas, but more importantly, once I was able to identify them, I was able to release myself from being defined in that way or living in like a shadowy, scared world inside of me. I didn't have to be defined by the things that happened to me or the things that I did. So it's just all, to me, is a testament to the fact that there is another way. We don't have to, I don't have to relive my mother's story. I don't have to um, recreate that trauma unconsciously for my child. It's huge. It's a humongous, world changing thing, and I get to see it pretty often in AA when someone gets sober and they stay sober and they stay on the right path. And I just think that's amazing. So I guess my point was that I strive to not be confined, to not put myself in a box and have a label and a category of I am a survivor of this or I am a victim of this. I don't like to feel trapped. I like to feel free. And that's how I feel right now. So thank you for coming and listening to chapter 29. And we'll see you pretty soon for chapter 30. Thank you.